Folks, we're at 3:59. We're going to give everyone one more minute. For our folks in the waiting room, the okay starting at 4?
Yeah, they're saying yes.
So, because everybody else, I don't know, maybe your favorite is something else. We're 1 minute away from launch. And John, do all systems look go?
Everything looks great from the control room, Jim.
Okay. Dona Liston, do all systems seem go?
All seem go.
We're launching. I am Jim Eskin, and on behalf of Eskin Fundraising Training, I'd like to welcome you to our webinar, which is going to be part of an ongoing series. And I got to tell you, like everyone else, I wish there were better and happier circumstances that were bringing us together. But this I will tell you, I would rather be with 100 friends in the nonprofit community who might be staff who gets paid to do their work. Thank you. Or it might be board members and volunteers who work equally as hard. We just don't pay them. So we are so happy to have you part of our learning community. And I first want to, they're going to get fuller introductions, but I want to bring in, first of all, my friend and colleague, Dona Liston, who's the owner of Lambermont Events. We met about 3 or 4 years ago when she was the chairman of the board of St. Paul's Episcopal Montessori School. And I had the privilege of leading a board training on the principles and strategies and practices of fundraising. You might see her backdrop. She has, I think, the most beautiful facility on the planet called Lambermont. Dona, good afternoon.
Hi, good afternoon, everyone.
And I'm going to share a little story. It was July 3, 2017. I, before, had gone through a health scare and had, out of nowhere, I was a guy who never sneezed. And a few months before that, I had a heart attack. If that wasn't enough fun, I had a stroke. And I developed a keen appreciation of our medical system that got me back to where I can do all the damage that I was doing before. So Andrea and I decided, you know, we want to do something special. My birthday's on July 3rd. Before we'd done something, we take friends out, I don't know, was it the Chuck and Cheesies or something like that? We wanted to do something special. And so we planned a party at Lambermont. We had a reception hour between 6 and 7 p.m. And I sent out an invitation. I think I had 47 people say they were coming. And we planned the tables and the chairs and the food for 50. Andrea and I were greeting everybody with a glass of champagne. It was about 6:45. Dona comes up to me, taps me on the shoulder, and says, Jim, I've counted 73 people. We have set up and only have food, you know, for 50. Immediately, Dona and her team reset the tables and the space, moved some chairs indoors. It was going to be a buffet. She changed it to plated because truthfully, we didn't have enough food for 73. And I got to tell you, nobody knew except me and Andrea. And I guess I can say she saved my hide. And I see the beauty and the flexibility of a great meeting planner. So Dona, thank you. That was the most important party we ever had. And you turned it from a catastrophe into a night we're never going to forget. So thank you. The next person I want to introduce
you're so welcome.
Is our producer, John Largent. And let me tell you something. These aren't easy to put on. John is CEO of a company here in San Antonio called Game Day. He is very well known for producing podcasts. And also, I don't know what he's not good at. Also, he's just knows everything you need to know about webinars. And by the way, we've made a deal, okay? John is serving as the producer. I'm serving as, I don't know, the star, okay? I can't say that. But if this goes as we're hoping will go, smooth, and you love it, I take all the credit, okay? If anything, if there's any glitch or hiccup or something like that, it's my producer's fault. John, does that sound like a fair arrangement?
That sounds fair. You made that perfectly clear from the beginning, so I'm all about it.
Okay, John, and since you won't see John, we're just making him work like you wouldn't believe. John, can you take 30 seconds just to share some housekeeping notes?
Absolutely, Jim. Here are a few quick housekeeping items that you want to be aware of. All participants of this event are muted throughout today's event. If you do have any question, you can go into the chat feature simply by clicking your screen, and you will see a thought bubble that says chat, and you can type your chat question in there. And toward the end of the event today, questions will be answered as time allows. Back to you, Jim.
Okay, let's go to the first slide or the next slide. I love working with nonprofits. I mentioned I was actually in the hospital for 6 weeks. It was the longest 6 weeks of my life. During that 6 weeks, guess what? I couldn't even walk. I can do everything now, but the one advantage I had being in the hospital, I had a lot of time to think. And every evening, we would say we were on Florida schedule. She would bring in her dinner around 4:30, and the hospital would serve me about 4:30. We had conversations what we wanted. We started comprising our bucket list. And I decided, you know, I have 2 dreams. The first dream is I'd worked for wonderful, large higher education institutions. They took very good care of me, and I loved what I learned. I loved what I did, but I've always yearned to do something on myself. That was dream number 1. And the second dream was to help people overcome their fear of fundraising, because I love working with nonprofits. You know, I think there is no part of life that nonprofits do not improve and add value to. The nonprofit community is huge. It's 1.5 million nonprofits in the United States. By the way, I'm a statistics freak, so you're gonna hear some stats. There are more than 100 nonprofits in the biggest and better state of Texas, and there's 6,000 nonprofits in San Antonio alone. And to the folks as attendees, thank you for your service, whether you're a staff or a board member or a volunteer, because you make our communities, our state, our nation, and our world better. And if there was ever a time we need what you do, it is right now. Could we move to the next slide? This is just to tell you, so in May of 2018, I began the dream, and that is to begin to work with nonprofits and help them to overcome their fear of fundraising. It's a modest organization. It's composed of me, my wife Andrea, and 2 cats. And to be truthful, the cats don't contribute much to the cause other than forcing us to take breaks. And I'm gonna talk a little more on that. Next slide, please. You know, part of this, and I'll tell you what, this rings true. I worked 25 years for 3 higher education institutions. I worked for university presidents. I worked for chancellors. I worked for foundation board members who were very, very accomplished business and community leaders, and absolutely fearless in everything they did in their personal and professional lives, with the exception of asking for a gift. And I thought, you know what is most fear is fear of the unknown. And And I concluded we as practitioners just haven't done a good enough job of demystifying what I call the art and science of fundraising. Next slide. So we've begun holding live workshops at our local Microsoft store, and it has been a great privilege to partner with Microsoft. And we've had other corporate partners. One right now is Mass Mutual, South Texas. And I think we've had now close to 100 workshops, and we have interacted with about 200 different nonprofits, and probably one way or another we've engaged. Now it's getting close to 1,000 different people. And Andrea and I have enjoyed every moment in meeting all of you. Next slide, please. One of the things I like to embrace is the concept of learning community. Donna and I are going to share a lot of expertise. We don't pretend to know everything. And every time I have a workshop and now a webinar, I like to think there's also wisdom in our attendees, and I like to tap that. And I like to think in all our workshops and webinars that with our collective wisdom of the learning community, the answers are always in the room. Next slide, please. This will show you the immediate schedule coming up in webinars. They will all be free. And I want to make sure I'll make a plug. I need to have your email address in my constant contact database for you to get invited. I think most of you have that, or else you wouldn't be on now. I'm going to show you how to do that a little later. I'm kind of excited about our schedule for April. Communicating During a Crisis is going to feature Lionel Souza, who I consider a legend in the fields of communications and advertising and branding. I know a lot of you want to know how you can compete for government and private grants. I've recruited the best go-to person I know for grants, Dr. Arlene Siller. And then fundraising in vastly indifferent and trying times, a very good friend and colleague, Marv Leroy, who has established the Institute for Philanthropic Excellence, is going to join us. And then, if you've all heard, one of the major corporate citizens here in San Antonio is USAA, and we're so proud that we're going to have their Senior Vice President of Philanthropy and their foundation, Harriet Dominique, join us on May 6th. Next slide, please. Let's learn a little about you. And by the way, you're going to see, I started as a dog person, but now I'm a cat person, so you're going to see a lot of cats in these slides. If you use the chat room, and we'd like you to kind of respond to these questions. Next slide, please. How would you describe your nonprofit affiliation? Is it as an executive director, a director of development, a board member, or a volunteer, or other type of nonprofit employee? And John, we'll give him a minute to do that. John?
Yes, we're getting responses right now, and they're running across the board. Looks like most people are either directors or other type of employees.
Okay, let's go. Let's move quickly through this, because I know I'm going to give Donna her fair. Let's go to the next slide, please. And then you see here, could you tell us how much face-to-face solicitation experience do you have? And you see the responses, and we'll give you about, we're going to be hard on you folks. We're going to give you about 15 seconds.
A, C, D.
Okay,
so,
let's move forward. And that doesn't surprise me, because this one is specifically on the scheduling events. So Donna, we're getting a lot of, I noticed in the RSVPs, a lot of director of events, more than fundraisers. We are getting some favorite fundraisers. Let's go to the next one. Finally, what's the largest gift? There's that cat. I love cats. What's the largest gift you obtained? And you see 4 responses.
And they're pretty much equally distributed across the board.
Okay,
there.
let's go to the next slide. And Don, I promise I'm going to pick up the pace, folks. I want to get Donna on here. When I talk about the art and what I'm going to do is share a few basic lessons about fundraising, but I want to put a particular emphasis on fundraising during this crisis. Fundraising is an art and a science, and I like to say the better you know the science, the more you can practice the art. But we have 4 distinct phases. The first one is, who are we going to ask? The second one is, to me, hugely important. How do we forge a personal and emotional relationship with the donor to set up the stage for the ask? The third one kind of speaks for itself, and that's when, how, who asks for the money. And finally, the last one is how we recognize and acknowledge our donor. Because what we want to do after I've gone to Donna and got her a gift for, say, 2020, I'm going to go back in 2021 and ask her not just to continue her gift, but to consider increasing the gift. And I might make a comment, if you feel a little reluctant about soliciting gifts, every nonprofit at a minimum should be focusing on 1, 2, and 4. They should be thinking about who do they want to ask. By all means, you should be communicating and cultivating with your donors. We'll talk a little more how you can solicit them now, and you should be thanking. You want to turn up the communication. We're going to talk a little about that. Turn up, next slide, please. I hope everyone, I'll talk a little longer as John's getting to the next slide. Let me emphasize, even if you're not soliciting, and I think in some cases you can be soliciting and should be soliciting, you can turn up the volume on the discovery, the cultivation, and the thank you part. I want to point, a lot of people say they're afraid of making the ask. I got to tell you, and I've been doing this for about 25 years. I did public relations before I did fundraising. 90% of getting a gift really happens before you ask for it. And if you do a good job of what we call cultivating, it's almost not easy, it's almost easy. But if you don't do a good job of, you see those components, awareness, involvement, interest, and commitment, I don't care how good your solicitor is, you're going to have a tough job of getting the gift. Next slide, please. By the way, people keep on saying they are afraid of asking for gifts. Well, I've asked for $100, $1,000, and millions of dollars. And really, it boils down to this formula. And you have basically, I also am a time freak, so I like to get to a solicitation very early in the meeting. But really, after you kind of tell your story and the need, you look them straight in the eyes, and basically it comes down to these simple words. If you can do it, you can be a great fundraiser. We need your help. Would you consider making a gift of a specific amount? That's very, very important. For a specific purpose, that's very important. Remember, and I'll repeat it, you ask for a specific amount, okay? Everything we do in our world has a price tag. Philanthropy is no different. And then you do something after you've made the ask. I don't care how long it is. You zip it, you shut up, and you wait for the donor to respond. Let's move on to the next slide. I wanted to say we're now in a period of social distancing, but all your nonprofits, what we're doing here, there's no reason that we can't continue to learn and share best practices and help each other confront this crisis and move forward. Next slide, please. I want to emphasize everybody can do something. We don't have an American to waste. I can teach fundraising. And I woke up about 10 days ago, and I looked at my wife, Andrea, and said, you know, we're a pretty modest organization, the 2 of us and 2 cats. But you know what we can do? We're small. We can move on a dime. And so we decided we're going to change completely the delivery in the content of our programs. And we're making that happen. And so for you small nonprofits, sometimes your small size can be an attribute because you can be nimble and like a gazelle, you can move very quickly. But everyone can do something. I can teach fundraising, so I can tell you I can do a lot more. Maybe you can bake the best chocolate chip cookies in the world. Well, guess what? Bake them, share them with neighbors. And by the way, you know, leave it on the doorsteps of your donors. And I know, wrap them carefully, by the way. I have a colleague that she's built a reputation, and it has put on smiles of folks who have given her $1,000, and it's put smiles on the donors that are giving her several $1 million. Next slide, please. This is one of everyone's favorite movies, Groundhog Day. And, you know, each day Bill Murray woke up and it was the same. And I can't help to tell you that, I know sometimes you've heard this elsewhere. We are now in Groundhog Day, and it's not a pretty day. The truth is there's a lot more that we don't know than we do know, but we need each other. And I think nonprofits will play a larger and more important role than they ever have before in the current Groundhog Day world. And John, next slide, please. Andrea and I were talking, what we do with a lot of our phone calls, we kind of put on speaker. It's our way of why waste a good friend. And Andrea's very good friend, Norma Remick. I ask everybody I speak to now, everyone I speak to, can you share something encouraging? And Norma ended the conversation that nothing lasts forever. So as much as we know, this is not going to last forever. I'm kind of a history freak. You know, there was the Spanish flu of 1918 to 1919. And by the way, I'm a history freak. I didn't realize how devastating it was. Of course, they couldn't track things as closely as we can now. It might have cost the world as many as 50 million lives. In the United States, it was 500,000, but it ended. Can we go to the next slide, please? I gotta tell you, and I will tell you, I won't brag on our cats, but if you have a pet, I always contended that pets do a lot more for us than we do for them. To me, you know, I get on a phone and talk to someone, we're talking about COVID-19. I see a delivery person, I get on the internet, everything COVID-19. You turn on the news, there is nothing but COVID-19. But these are our two cats. The white cat is Joey. The brown cat is Billy. I'm wondering, Andrea, what more we could do as cat nuts. We actually do not carry their photos around. We do everything short of that. But they are such an escape at this moment. The cat doesn't, you can't text a cat, you can't email a cat, you can't make a strategic plan with a cat. They just allow you to escape that Groundhog Day of anxiety that we all find ourselves in. And right now, we consider these cats family members because they're doing so much for us to get through this stress. Next slide, please. Okay, some quick, and I'm going to pick up the pace. American philanthropy is a huge annual enterprise. It's not showing 2018. Total philanthropy hit $428 billion. That's more than $1 billion a day, but $1 billion a day. What I want to emphasize, you know, the economy has had ups and downs, and philanthropy has consistently stayed very strong. I have every hope that it will remain so. Not every hope. I think based on history, philanthropy and the generosity of the American people has always responded to the times. Next slide, please. Quickly, you know, we hear about the mega philanthropists, but in my book, if you give time or money, and usually those two gifts come together, you're a philanthropist. So you hear that most of America is a philanthropist. They volunteer time and money. Next slide, please. By the way, too, I know when you're thinking about who to ask for money, sometimes it's overlooked that the vast majority of giving comes from individuals. As you see, it's about 70%. Now, don't get me wrong, I love foundations and corporations, but I was taught you go fishing where the fish are biting, and they're biting in the pool of individuals. Next slide, please. And by the way, as anyone, I'm going to pick on Donna and John. You know the 80-20 principle? And do you know where that came from?
Yes, 80% of your time is spent getting.
It's
yes.
Basically, there was an Italian economist in the year 1906 who named Precedes, what he did, he started by counting, he went to his garden and counted the peas and pea pods. And he found out that 80% of the peas came from 20% of the pods. And he said, aha! And the next thing he did, he studied who owned the lands in Italy. Guess what? 80% of the land was owned by 20% of the people. And really, since then, that's applied, that 80% of the outputs will come from 20% of the inputs. That held in philanthropy. And now it is an even more extreme. And so I talked about the $428 billion that was given last year. 88% came from just 12% of the donors. Those mega donors have a growing and massive impact. And I believe they are going to continue to respond and meet the challenge of the crisis and lead philanthropy in this new chapter. Next slide, please. By the way, we're talking about special events. A lot of you are obviously canceling and rescheduling, but I want you to know, and I have a bias, that actually special events are the least efficient way to raise money. You might enjoy them, you might have fun, it might be good PR, but usually about half the cost, half the money you raise goes to the cost of the event. Don and I were working the other day. I always think, even, and we're going to get into this more specifically, it's what you do. I mean, I think you could go to the people who buy your tables and buy your tickets and ask them for their gifts. They just don't have to put on a tuxedo and drive downtown and park or wherever. Next slide, please. Okay, a couple final lessons. Believe it or not, Dona Liston is going to come on. But lesson number one, and I'm going to sound like a combination of your mother and the Center for Disease Control. Take care of yourself. I know you've heard that before, but you're not going to be able to help your loved ones in your nonprofit unless you are exercising an abundance of caution. Next slide, please. I showed a dog. How's that? Equal time. This one really needs no clarification. In your communications with your donors and your stakeholders, there's going to be a lot more that you don't know than you do know. But guess what? You're in the same boat as everybody else. And we are going to emphasize that you should communicate what you do know, as limited as it is. How is this affecting your nonprofit? Next slide, please. And I want to look to you all. This is a special request. I mean, there is so much stress and anxiety and doom and gloom. As nonprofits, you see close up the best behavior of people because they give their gifts in time. You know, you believe that Americans have big hearts. And so I call on you to be a beacon of positive light. Next slide, please. And by the way, I wrote we're going to follow up. We're going to send you the slides and a recording. And I've written some pieces. One is on how to fundraise from home. And I think a fundraiser has an advantage in which it has to be virtual, but you can continue. Remember, maybe even if you're not soliciting, you should continue to cultivate and steward your donors. Next slide, please. And maybe I like to say you got to give donors hugs, but let's give them hugs, okay? And you can do that as obviously through email, social media. I know a big thing right now, the fact is a lot of our donors tend to be a little older in life. I'm one of those people. I think this is a great time. If they don't know how to do video conferencing, teach them right now. Next slide, please. Treat your donors like family. What are you doing with your family? You're checking in on them. You're asking them how they're doing. You're telling them how you're doing. I would encourage you to treat your donors, call them, find out what they're doing, tell them how your nonprofit's doing. Next slide, please. Okay, and I'm robbing Donna of time. I'm going to send you a piece. I'm saying that there's a 4R strategy, and I'm going to really jump through this. And the reason I shouldn't feel too guilty is because I'm robbing Donna's time. And the second part is part of my follow-up, which we aim to send the link with the slides and recording tomorrow. I'll have 2 written pieces here. One is on this 4R strategy. Let's quickly run through it. Rapid. Okay, that speaks, if you've delayed in communicating with your donors, don't delay anymore, okay? Sure, there are a lot of things, there are more things you don't know than you do know, so communicate that, touch them virtually. Next slide. How is your nonprofit and its mission relevant to the crisis of COVID-19? I would put your staff and management and board together by audio or video conference call and really distill that into a 1-page summary and be able to respond that. You might even want to tweak your mission. Next slide, please. Relationship. I've been discussing this with some of my colleagues. At a minimum, is this a time to ask for money? I would suggest going with those who are your largest and closest donors. I don't know if this is a good time unless your mission is providing emergency relief to approach people who have not contributed. That might have to wait, but I would certainly approach my major gift donors. Each organization is going to define a major gift in a different way. Okay. And next slide, please, John. Resilient. One thing I know about nonprofits, they're resourceful, they are committed, they work way too hard, and they know how to stretch nickels into dimes. I think you have a history of being resilient, and that's how you're going to get through this. Next slide, please. Oh my God, we're going to let Dona Liston in. What's happening? Donna, did you believe it? Okay, Donna, I might even trim down your introduction. First of all, she knows more about planning meetings and executing meetings and taking fiascos like I handed her in July 3rd, 2017, and making successes. She's organized over 1,000 events. She's a leader in her trade association. And if there's anything about meetings that she doesn't know, I can't imagine what it is. So Donna, are you ready? We're going to start. Let me explain this. I have a couple of questions I'm going to ask Donna, and then we're going to let the audience in through the chat room. Donna, are you ready to get started? Donna, are you ready to get started?
Sure.
Okay. Donna started.
I'm ready.
Okay, thank you. She started by organizing and entertaining at children's parties. I don't know if you were a clown, but let's start with a question on a very human level. You started your career entertaining children. You have coordinated weddings and other special events that have brought a lot of joy to a lot of people, and you deal with people at very stressful times. So what suggestions do you have for people to cheer themselves up? Think of families that have children at home. Think of couples that might be driving each other crazy. And think about people who live by themselves.
You know, the number one thing, and you even do this in events, think about the background noise. So the music, what music are you playing during the day? Is it something that's keeping you happy and cheerful? And I think that right there, because if there's some background noise, then you're not by yourself, or it could be calming, or it can, there's just lots of different ways with that. But I think that's one. And then the other is, as you mentioned earlier, what with your cats, what is your calming effect, or what is your, what gives you peace? And with me, it's being creative. And so every day to do something. I've gone through my craft room. So, it's just kind of, so pick and choose of what makes you happy.
Okay, Don, thank you. I'm going to move to the second question. You have helped individuals and organizations to reschedule events long before this crisis, okay? What were the keys to effectively rescheduling those events before the age of social distance?
Well, first off, a good planner is going to have plan A and plan B. So know what your plan B is and know who and what is going to make that go into effect. Every event should have a plan B, whatever it is, rain plan or whatever.
Great. As you well know, and I think this is one of your favorite topics, nonprofits are fueled by the passion and the energy of amazing volunteers. What roles do you think volunteers can be asked to play during this crisis?
You were coming in and out a little bit about that, but you were...
Okay, let me try it again. Nonprofits are fueled by the passion and energy of amazing volunteers. What roles can volunteers be asked to play during this crisis?
I think connectability with this one. Make sure that everybody, your volunteers, can be checking on, whether it's checking on your donors, your office staff, whatever, and helping with that connectability.
Hey, Donna, you're zipping right through the questions, unlike me. Technology is allowing us to communicate in a wide range of effective ways. What are you finding the most effective way to communicate without face-to-face contact?
I was just on a webinar that really talked about this, is with everyone you've been communicating with in the same way. So first off, you should have been asking a long time ago of what the best way to communicate with that person is. So whether it's the donors or volunteers, so do they prefer email or live? Do they prefer text messages? So the whole idea is don't stop what you're already doing unless it is that one-on-one. And if it is that one-on-one where you had a set coffee date with so-and-so every Wednesday, well, now let's use FaceTime and all of those things we already have. Now keep using that plus more.
I want to interject. I even have colleagues, particularly the chocolate chip lady, who I'm jealous of. Those really are good chocolate chip cookies. She drops the cookies off in front of the door, and the donor goes to the window, and they kind of they wave at each other. Do you have any success stories to share of organizations that have moved quickly to take action to make up for canceled events?
I do, and there's so many out there that are going and shifting gears to virtual. Number one is the easiest, fastest way to be able to flip on a dime is your auctions, going online instead of live auctions, or doing a live auction via Zoom. And so I saw one that is doing a Zoom variety show, and
Okay.
There's blackjack tape, there's all kinds of things like this. So yeah, lots of ways it can be happening. Got to be creative.
Okay. You'll love this question. Okay, Donna?
All right.
Where can nonprofits turn to for experience and expertise in rescheduling their events?
There's a lot of things going on out there, right? ILEA Hub. So ILEA is the International Live Event Association. You do not have to be a member right now to do any of their webinars. They're having them several times. And then they're talking about the event professionals. So it's IleaHub.com. And then another one I would say is Lisa Clark, and it's Fundraising with Lisa Clark. And she, on her Facebook page, is talking about DIY virtual and what else you can do for fundraising. And she's a guru on that. Many of you know Greater Giving. And Deborah with Greater Giving, she is the one that you can call to get that online auction going quickly. So there's several out there, but look in your own backyard first. There's lots of ILEA members. There's lots of planners that can do this, and this is what they do.
Great, Donna. And by the way, I'm being distracted. I'm seeing email that some people not on time, but having trouble to get in. But I want to remind everyone that we are going to send out, whether you got, if you registered for this event, you're going to get the recording and slides and some reading. I hope you like, but you don't have to read it. Donna, you are much better at keeping the train running than me, but can you kind of now, so I want to get a few questions in. Can you take, kind of zip through your 10 do's and don'ts?
You bet.
Let's go to the next slide.
And don'ts is don't make sure you're communicating. And when I say that, if you're going to have to reschedule an event, talk to your vendors. That's the first one you want to talk to. So from your venues to your caterers, find out what their availability is, what their program is doing, how they can help, because everybody is having to do that. And they're having to deal with not just you and your event, but lots of others. But also communicate with your stakeholders, from your sponsors to your volunteers, because how can you set a date even if you don't know what's available and all of that? So number one, communication. Don't be silent. Number two, do's and don'ts, is let's not talk about refunds.
Amen, sister.
And that goes both ways. Is if you already have deposits down, let's ask about moving your deposit. Don't ask for a refund. We're all in this. We're all, if these caterers would go broke if they had to refund every penny that has moved around. So know that. But also let's not talk about refunding money immediately to your sponsors or to your ticket holders or whatever. Let's talk about transferring money, whether next year, everything. So that's that. Do's and don'ts number 3 is don't think this is going to be business as usual. You have to be adaptable. Somebody told me today that they normally do lunch and learns, and they charge for their lunch and learns because they all gather up, and they were able to charge for lunch. So now they were kind of concerned of, how do I charge if I'm not providing a lunch? And they've decided they're calling a caterer and having boxed lunches delivered to everybody that is registered for their lunch and learn. So now, that $10 box of lunch, you can still charge $25. It's being hand delivered to everybody with that little personal note that you're having going, looking forward to seeing you at noon today via Zoom or whatever. So just know that we have to be adaptable. We have to learn to shift gears. And that's what we do. And how we're going to do it is being very creative. So let's go to number 4. Right now is not the time to be afraid or ashamed to ask. And I've had somebody ask that. It's like, how can you go out and ask for money right now when everybody's hurting? And
hey, Donna, I'm going to butt in, which I'm very good at.
Absolutely.
And I'm going to say to your major donors, I would approach them with a line like this. We could not imagine approaching the current situation without turning to you for input and your leadership.
Yes, yeah. But yeah, moving forward, if you don't ask, you're not going to get anything. So at least try. You know, that's kind of has been the attitude, is at least go try. And, you know, yeah, your big stakeholders is, we really need you now. And I will say, I got an email today from the American Cancer Society saying, all of our events have been canceled. We need $1 million. And this is how, you know, now we're just going to ask you to give it to us. So don't be afraid. They're all, somebody, if you're not going to do it, somebody else will.
Okay.
So might as well be you too. So our number 5 do's and don'ts is don't forget about your sponsors. So I want to kind of reiterate on this one. So either you need to fulfill their contract, credit what you have given, or refund. Now, that C number 1 is the communication. Go back to your sponsors and talk to them. Some may say, you know what, I just gave you that money because I love you and I believe in your cause. It makes no difference what you were promising me. I don't care about the signage and I don't care about da-da-da. Others are going to say, no, I need somebody. I need that exposure. And so be creative maybe on how to give that to them. So an example is you were going to have a gala and you had wine glasses produced already with that sponsor's logo on it. So now you have 200 wine glasses. So why don't we do something where you're delivering wine glasses to somebody, to the your virtual meeting, and then during that time you're going to now have everybody make sure that they cheer with their wine glass that has that logo on it for the exposures. But the whole idea is,
Hey, Donna, can you hear me?
Can't what you're doing now. I can.
Okay. Hey,
I
John.
can.
John, can you hear me? John Largent.
Have we lost it?
I'm here.
Okay. Is there anything too that I guess where technology is great when it works, and sometimes it just is like the rest of us, it acts a little human? Any comments where I know the audio, just tell people we are adjusting the audio as we go along, right?
Yes, that is correct. And there was a surge on the internet. So
Okay.
that's probably what caused that.
Okay. Well, I'm going to have maybe a 3rd bottle of wine. Let's, okay, Donna, keep on going.
Okay, I see that I'm breaking up. Okay, so so just again, make sure that you are taking care of that sponsor, and it's all about talking to them. And so you may not be able to fulfill what you already promised, but maybe there's something else you can do for them, and it may be now not for that one event, but for all year. Whether it's now, if it's for later on, well, that's too late. My ad was not going to be good at that time or whatever. But again, that C number 1 is about communicating.
Okay. Okay.
Number
Next
6,
slide.
are we? All right. Number 6. So don't ignore those donors either. This is not the time to go silent. This is a time to be thanking everybody. And just an example is, I just got Easter card from St. Paul's Episcopal Montessori School. Well, we have nothing going on right now with fundraisers, but I just wanted a card to say, I hope this brings you a little sunshine today from your friends at St. Paul's Episcopal Montessori School. And so don't forget about those. You know, those donors may be sitting at home with nothing to do. Those donors may be going crazy, but sending a little sunshine to somebody will make them remember you. And then number 7 is that just don't sit and wait. You just can't just say, well, let's just hold out and play for it. Let's either, if you've rescheduled, continue going forward. And You're going to be talking to all those vendors to move it, but your donors, what's a good time for them? How can we be creative? Something else that I do have to say is if you have a raffle and your raffle ticket says that raffle is at a certain day, you still have to have that raffle on that day. So know that. So just because your event is not going to happen, that raffle still has to happen. So do something live with that raffle. Go onto a Zoom, go onto something fun, and pull those out. And you know, so
John,
that
any
creativity,
comment?
do that brainstorming.
Okay, go ahead.
No, I think it's a lot of brainstorming. So, but don't think you're alone. There's so many people out there that are in the same boat. You know, there's event professionals that are in the boat that, you know, some are unemployed now. So think that, oh, if there's somebody that you know that's unemployed that you can be either employing or using as a volunteer or potentially helping, make sure you get in there. And then the continuing education. There's so much going on out there right now. And again, I'm going to plug that ILEA Hub.
Okay, John. Next slide.
There's no time for that. Next slide. Number 9 is the do's and don'ts of your volunteers. Don't forget about them. You've got to have those volunteers. So touch base with them, just a well checkness with them. Okay. Just a phone call with, hey, just checking on it. And then number 10, the number 1 here is, on number 10 is, don't forget to breathe. Take care of yourself. You can't take care of others if you don't take care of yourself. And I think that right there is, you know, just like the airplane tells you, put your face mask on first. So make sure you're taking care of yourself. Don't forget to breathe. Take that deep breath every morning and conquer the world.
I tell you, unlike me, Donna, you kept right on schedule. And John, I think I'm perceiving there's a little more difficulty hearing Donna than me from saying here. But anyways, I'm asking our producer, maybe we have time for 1 or 2 questions. We are going to close this down at 5. Let's stay on that slide. But John, is there any question that kind of jumps out?
Yeah, I've got a question here. They're asking, if a person is talking to you, does that really mean they're willing to give? I refuse sitting in on asks if I know I won't give.
Donna, if you want to take a crack, I'll also I'll put my 2 cents in.
I will say I'm willing to talk to anybody because you don't know even if it's not the money, maybe it's a volunteer or maybe they need your services. So I'm big on, it's not what you know, but who you know, being at the right place at the right time. So meeting everybody, all those things kind of fall through.
Don, I want to say you know too much about fundraising, but she hit that one right on the nose. One of the things we emphasize, you have to know your donor, and I think even with, before this social distance, nothing beats. There's no such thing as a unproductive conversation with a donor. Even if you get no, you're going to learn something, and you're going to advance the relationship. And by the way, I'm going to put in a little aside. To me, the really savvy fundraisers, after they get no, remember we said nothing lasts forever? They continue to communicate and get input from the donor, and guess what? A no can become a yes. John, any last question, and we're going to wrap up.
No, that was it, Jim.
Okay. I'm going to close out. First of all, Donna, man, you teach me how to keep on schedule. I asked Donna to finish her portion at 4:50. She did that beautifully. I want to end with a few of my favorite comments. I think they applied before and they apply especially now. Maya Angelou, one of our great poets we lost a couple of years ago, once said, People won't remember what you said. People will not remember what you did. They will never forget how you made them feel. Our job in fundraising and building relationships is to make our donor and donor prospects feel like they're the most important people in the world. It's either that easy or that hard, particularly now. Let your donors know how important they are to your organization. Next slide, please. If you're not on, this is a little housekeeping, but we send out a monthly newsletter. It's free, and it keeps me busy. And I think we're going to send out a follow-up, and it'll have a link. If you're not on that list, it's very easy to sign up. And I have to say, not just the newsletter, but you're not going to get invitations to the workshops unless you're in my database. So I'm going to be asking at the most for your name, your email address, those, at an absolute minimum, I need those two. And if you want to share the title you have in the nonprofit and the organization's name. Next slide, please. Some of us are accused of being tireless promoters, but with my wife, Andrea's help, I wrote my first book this year. It's called 10 Simple Fundraising Lessons. It's, let me tell you, when I say it's a quick read, I ain't kidding. It's 80 pages. I think Donna completed it on an airplane ride. And I've tried to distill the most important principles and strategies and best practices into as simple terms that anybody with a knowing head and an honest heart, and I think everybody in our nonprofit community has those Jeffersonian virtues, you can learn those quickly. Next slide, please. And now I wanted to end by giving you a money-back guarantee, okay? And it didn't cost you anything, but still, you get your money back. Your chances of getting the gift go way up when you ask. Can you all repeat that through your social distance? Your chances of getting the gift improve, go up when you ask. Next slide, please. I am a history nut, and I love studying about the presidents. And I grew up in Boston and during the 60s. And so like many people from my generation, I was a fan, and John F. Kennedy was my hero. And, you know, he's known for many beautiful words. These are a phrase, and when I look at it, I don't think it's ever been more applicable in time. John F. Kennedy made this part of his commencement address to American University. I didn't like that part because I went across town to George Washington University on June 10th, 1963. And John F. Kennedy said, for in the final analysis, our most basic common link is that we all inhabit this small planet. We all breathe the same air. We all cherish our children's future, and we are all mortal. I mean, I get chills just reading that. That's what John F. Kennedy said in 1963, and they have never rung with such truth and fidelity in meeting as now. Next slide, please. I want to thank, we're running this bus on time. Thank you very much. First of all, to the person who knows more about planning, executing, dancing, juggling, rescheduling than anybody I know on the planet, Dona Liston, who is the owner of Lambermont Events. And by the way, you see behind there, for those of you who can ever get to San Antonio, her Lambermont mansion is, well, I don't know what heaven's like, Dona, but that's where I want to go. And finally, you know, it took a lot of work and a lot of juggling to put this together. And I want to thank our producer, John Largent, who's CEO of Game Day Media. John, thank you very much. let's go to the final slide. And this is how you reach me, okay? And as my wife Andrew would tell you, I'm kind of a freak on responding quickly to email. And again, I want you to sign up for our free monthly newsletter, because that way you can get invited to the future workshops. And we've just scheduled 5 of them. I'm expecting this to go on. In fact, this is going to go on no matter what happens with COVID-19. I hope that we all can get together and forget about the virtual hugs and do real hugs in the not too distant future. But we're going to continue our commitment to work with all you wonderful people in the nonprofit sector. And we're going to send out to everybody who registered a link. This will be sent tomorrow. It takes a little time to do some processing. We're going to send out, so you'll have the slides and the recording, and whether you want it or not, 2 pieces I wrote. One is on fundraising from home, and the other is on the 4 R's of dealing with COVID-19. So to all, let me close. Thank you for your commitment, your leadership. I think of nonprofit people, they represent the very finest in human behavior. And we also, by the way, every day interact with the very best in human behavior. We know better than anyone else how large the American hearts are. And we know that American hearts are about to go to work as they've never done before. So thank you. And again, we'll be sending you a follow-up with the slides and the recording and the other nice things I've mentioned. And again, for the work you do for your nonprofit to improve the community, state, the nation, and the world, thank you. And everyone stay healthy.